Right, so welcome to episode 174, I think.
Yeah, I think
I'm
so
pretty
too.
sure.
That's
Or
when I
five.
was wrong.
Yeah, ish. Anyway, around there, right? You might not see this episode on YouTube as we have collected strikes on a copyright infringement. I used to work with a videographer years back, 6-7 years ago, and then we had a deal going on doing all the videos that you saw, the early podcast and the movement videos and all that stuff. And he changed his mind and tried to ask me years later for a lot of money for it. And I said no. So strikes on YouTube, and YouTube does not, he's like, okay, turns out if you shot the video, you own it, and therefore no one can use it. So I'm not paying it. So as you see this, the YouTube video probably will be taken down, and so everything will stay. That means you're watching it either on Mighty Networks or listening to it. Anyway, so doesn't matter. So today we're going to talk about the template as it relates to Strongfit. I was having a conversation on a mentoring program with some old school coaches of mine, and we are talking about that. The tribulations of Strongfit, like all the steps we went through, to get to Q training and everything. And so right now you have mostly with Q training a finished product, but it really wasn't that when we started. Like I had some principles, some ideas that I put together, but there was a lot of trying. So mistakes, obviously, because that's the only way you're going to learn. Mm-hmm. And I put all my coaches through the crazy ideas that I had at the time. So whenever I came up with something, we made everybody try it. And I think it was, in a way, for coaches, a great time because they got to
go on the ride with you.
Right, and then, but more importantly, they got to do the work. There was no. There is a danger as starting with a finished product. Because so there's an arch that is exploration versus exploitation, right? And it's a very important arch. Like all arches, you cannot stay only on one side. Too much exploration, you don't do anything. Yeah. Too much exploitation, you'll get hurt or you just hit a glass ceiling because you're just not exploring enough the angles. I think this is where bodybuilding was very strong in their approach, is because they wanted the muscles to be shaped a certain way. It was all about angles. Like you have to work the muscle in all angles. And I think that matters a lot. If you see what bodybuilders, for example, can bench press, like bench press or incline press, it's ridiculous. If you take on average, your pro bodybuilder is stronger on the press, not on the squat, on the deadlift, but on the press, like incline press or whatever, than your average powerlifter. No question. Yeah. Like those guys are all bench pressing, 5 plates and just repping, which in powerlifting is a very high number for guys that are not specialists in strength, because their arms are bigger, because of all the angles on the chest, so the stabilization is there. They're very good at stabilizing weight. Not that bodybuilding is necessarily what I would recommend to get good at sports in general or anything like that, but the idea of bodybuilding toward assistance work, there's a few concepts there that I think are very useful. And so in a way, my coaches got to, especially the early one, got to try the stuff, fail, and then there was no issues with failing. Because even me, I didn't know where we were going. There's some stuff where I was like, I think it's a good idea. Like when I started the protocol, I had my coaches, I was like, we're starting the nutrition protocol. And at first, everybody was like, what is this? You're crazy. And I was like, well, I'm going to create a group over there, and then I'm going to do it. So whoever wants to do it with me is coming. But if you're coming on the group, you have to do it. 30 of them came on the group, and then 3-4 years later, guess what? The protocol works. But they got to try the stuff from the beginning, but so they had a chance to make mistakes because there was no pressure on it. And I feel people that are getting into Strongfit, not maybe today or just recently, they see episode 150 they see stuff like that, and they see a finished product, but they don't realize the layers beneath that finished product. And so I feel like if they jump into, for example, the template, just trying to do it exactly the way it is written, they'll miss the point. So that's what I want to talk about. I want to explain the template in that sense, because I think it explains Strongfit very well. So let me explain the template a bit. For example, if you look at squat day, we squat and then we do sumo. right? And then we do either lunges or some sandbag stuff, right? So not a leg day bodybuilding wise, no isolation work in the sense of everything are compound movements, right? And it's blasting the same thing over and over again. So it's a very aggressive day. It gets me very tired. It takes me 2 days to recover every time. That's why I put it on Tuesday, and then Thursday is kind of an accessory work for the.
I think squat day is the hardest.
By far, yeah. I thought the deadlift day would be murder, not even close to squat day. I think it's a squat followed by the sumo is just murder. Yeah. Although I just destroyed myself doing that with sandbags. So yeah, it's a combination. I mean, but let me explain why. I've seen, and we did it too within Strongfit, but at some point there's too much warming up, too much activating the hammies, and you know, like you spend 40 minutes activating this or doing that. Yeah. At the end, you're not squatting. And I mean, like you're moving really well on your squat at 100 kilo. Right, that's a weak squat. Not for you, obviously, for you it's very heavy, but like, you know, my average coach who weighs like 90 kilos, if you squat 100, dude, like we need weight. You can make, any guy who's decently strong can make 100 kilo look perfect, but is that the point?
I understand what you're saying. I think it's also a coach thing to wanting to keep the technique so good and make the movement so perfect, which is the job. You know what I mean? It's the job.
It's not the job.
No, but part of the job.
I know what you're saying.
Teach that movement correctly and teach your attention and everything. But
right, but that's an excellent point you're making, because I will disagree. I don't disagree with what you're saying, but I will frame it differently. I will say that the job is not to teach the squat. The job is to teach that person to squat.
Yeah.
Right, that's a massive difference between the two. Yeah. There's a massive difference. And what I see right now is people who are learning to squat. And that's a problem. Or coaching to squat. You're not coaching to squat, you're coaching that person to squat. It is not the same. Because that person might not fit into that nice box that you have for them. Like, I had coaches where they had a very specific, whose name I shall not say, type of squat that was created by a guy who explained, a physio who explained everybody how to move well, and I've seen that squat time and time again. No one squats heavy with this. No one does. They all champion of making 100 kilo look the same. I'm like, yeah, it's 100 kilo. Like I can do whatever I want with that weight. That's not the point. That's exploration. That's like, you know, it's position over tension. It's making the squat look a certain way. It's technically, position over tension. But then the point of the squat is to look a certain way, is to look good, right? Because you're a coach and then you have to show your people first how to squat. I'm like, and I agree, but I would put it at point number 2. Remember first why you're squatting. You're squatting to get stronger, or strength endurance, whatever it is, but you're squatting to squat. You're not squatting for, like, you know, for the crowd, for Facebook, for stuff like that. So I'm all for exploration and finding new technique and learning and activating your hammies and all that stuff. At some point, you gotta squat. And guess what? You gotta squat heavy enough, and so that's not necessarily a weight, but it's more like a percentage. Like, let's see where you are at 95%, right? Usually 95%, you see the faults starting to show up.
Well, that's the thing too, like you can't really see the weaknesses until you put enough weight on.
Exactly, and percentage, right? Yeah, exactly. And then even after that, like the weight on your structure will also change your form and stuff like that. But all of those things you discover as you do them. A lot of those things can be explained with words, but they don't get anchored into your mind until you do them. So if you have a squat of 120 kilos, right, and you squat 100, right, let's say 4 reps. Right, that's a fairly low percentage. What is that, like around 85? That's a fairly low percentage, right? No, less than that, yeah. Sorry, I didn't sleep well last night, so my brain is fried.
Sick.
Yeah, I'm not sick, but like I did a workout with a sandbag, I was talking about on Thursday, and then no, it wasn't on Thursday, it was on Tuesday. And I lit up my glute med. They cramped all night long. I did not sleep for fucking 10 minutes. 10 minutes at a time, and then would wake up. They still lit up. So this morning I took some aspirin, and now they cramp less. I was like, well, I wish I had figured that one out last night. Duh. So that maybe I could have slept. I'm like, dude, come on, like it's
should
slow
have,
going a bit. Yeah, on that one I should have figured that one out. Anyway, the squat day went very well, but I just lit up my glute med. So, oh my god, like I've done that like 4 times in my life, where I feel my spine super activated, and I don't sleep. Usually I don't sleep that night. Yeah, it's always like that. And then 2 days later, I'm 10% stronger.
Yeah.
This is the 5th time I've done it. I would not recommend it because it doesn't feel good, but every single time I got stronger out of it. I don't know what it is, but it's like that. I think it's a deep major activation of specific things. But I did it through squatting. Anyway.
I am sick. I have a fever.
Yeah.
And I'm destroyed.
Yeah.
But I'm here.
Did you lose your sense of taste and smell yet?
Yeah,
Maybe not.
Taste,
okay, so there you go. Yeah.
Smell, my smell's gone.
Ivermectin. Anyway. So where was I? Right. So at some point, like I started to see too many people. Even we did it, like, 30 minutes of find your psoas first, find your hammies, find your this, find your that. Like I was doing that before the bench. I would find my teres major. Right, and there's a place for that, don't get me wrong. But at some point, you also gotta be able to show up at the gym and bench and warm up doing the exercise you're gonna do for the stuff. If you cannot, that doesn't mean show up at the gym and just bench and break your shoulders, obviously, but that means there's something is lacking somewhere. There's an issue there that should be fixed. You should not have to do this. Let's put it this way. So you might have to do it right now, which then go do it for sure. But the goal of this is to eventually not have to warm up as much. Yeah. So your warm up should not have started 10 minutes 6 months ago and now it's 40. Then we're doing things wrong. Right, so you should have 40-minute warm-up 3 months ago, and now you're at 10 minutes. Then we're doing good. I mean, it's a control function. Remember that like we should be able to walk to a bar and squat an empty bar as a warm-up for the squat.
That's the whole point of activating the muscles, that at some point they just respond, right?
Exactly. And that's where a little bit that bodybuilding of finding angles is. I want us to fix movement through movement. I don't want us to do the functional segregation, which is splitting things too much, because at some point it has to be put back into functional integration, which is you take all those pieces and you put them back together toward what was the point in the first place. It's like those projects by Leonardo da Vinci. Like one cog turns left and then at the end it goes up and down. So you can split them up to study how he did that. But at some point you have to put them back together to see what the function of the machine is in the first place. It's going to be the same thing for training. Is that there is that exploration, like you can't find your hammies. All right, so let's first give you a taste of that. So maybe we do banded curls or whatever, just so you go, oh, I have hammies. Huh, interesting. All right, so you can't find them at a certain intensity. Okay, what do we need to do in the meantime? Blah, 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 blah. But the goal should always be like, you're supposed to feel your hammies in the first place. Right, so
they're tools.
They're tools. So that doesn't mean like right now you don't need to do that. But I would like to see that the goal is to get rid of those activation exercises. That should be the goal. Do not keep doing them for 2 years straight. You're doing it wrong then. Like, you know what I mean? Like you should not need that. To squat in a vacuum. You might need it today, but in a vacuum, I would like for you to eventually be able to get rid of them. Yeah. That's the point, right? And so I had a coach like that where he has, like the pain on the back squat or stuff like that. So he rebuilds activation, stuff like that. And the second the squat went to a certain level, boom, back again. I'm like, all right, we need to teach you to squat then. Like we're doing something wrong on the squat. So you know how we're going to fix it? No, not by doing this and this and that. We're going to squat. We're going to fix your squat movement by squatting. We're just going to use the Q-1, which means we never let you go into the fail. We're never going to do anything stupid. But at some point, exploitation is necessary, which means you got to put the blinders down and squat. And in that process, you will discover that you were told to squat this way. It happens that for you, it's not the best way.
Well, you have to go in and just...
You're going to have to figure out what is good for you. So look at the great squatters, right? Some squat narrow, some squat wide. Yeah. Like Larry will squat super wide. I got criticized in a way for squatting that wide. Like, oh, it's more like a good morning and whatever. I'm like, I don't care, it works. Like a guy like Larry Wills squats very wide.
Yeah.
Stan Efferding, who was one of the greatest powerlifters of all time, like squatted, world record holder, squatted, and a bodybuilder, by the way, in his 40s. Yeah, the dude was legit. Yeah, he was a pro bodybuilder. He had the world record at 275, so 125 kilos about, and in his 40s. Yeah, dude was badass. Badass. Yeah, exactly. And squatted 900 pounds. I mean, the whole thing. Like, and he squatted super wide. Bench 600, 270 kilos. Yeah. So his deadlift was only 8 something, but his bench made up the difference. Yeah. Again, bodybuilder, that bench big numbers. Yeah. It's interesting. Anyway, just to say, sorry. He.
Bless you, my dear.
Sorry. He squatted very wide. I'm sure he didn't start like that because as a bodybuilder, it's not necessarily interesting for him to squat so wide. So I know from watching him that when he's doing bodybuilding, actually squats narrow, so he can get the quad engagement that he's looking for. But when he came to strength, he figured out for him, very much leaning forward with a very wide stance actually was how he could lift the most weight. So, all right, like, is that the right way to squat for everybody? No, probably not. It might be yours. You know how you're going to figure it out? By doing it.
Yeah.
But
well, that's a bit for everything in life, right?
Right, but the problem is by doing it, that means you're going to fail.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna miss. Some of the stuff is not going to work, so you're going to feel you wasted time and energy doing something that was stupid, and maybe you'll feel your hips too much by trying wide or whatever. But let me tell you, it is not wasted time. It is not. You need to know how not to squat for yourself, and wide squats is a perfectly valid way of squatting if your hips happen to be that particular shape. If you're a coach, you need to know that, because you might have to switch some of your clients to a wide squat, and that's okay. And yes, people will look at you funny at the gym. That's true as well. Like, there seems to be like a one way for all push in the fitness industry. There's an account that annoys me every time on Instagram. I never follow it, but it shows up on my search feed about like how to squat all the time. And the guy has like over 1 million followers, and I still don't know why, because what have you done that made you an expert on squatting? I don't get it. But it's typical physio stuff. So they all squat the same way, like narrow stance, knees very out, all the way down. And I'm like, but you can't. Like, he was supposed to fix a dude's squat. He's like, but that's my new project. And then we never heard about it. My guess is because it didn't work. Not everybody fits into a nice box. If you look at all the top powerlifters, look at them squat, and you'll see all types of squats. So you're gonna have to study that, and you're gonna have to do it for yourself. You will fail sometimes. It will not always work out, and that's okay.
Sometimes you have to know what you don't want to know what you want.
Right, but yes, exactly. And in the meantime, like for example, squatting wide, like it's gonna make your glutes work harder. I can tell you that. Your hips will work really hard, and then you do that, and then after that you do the sumo, same idea. So why do we put the sumo after the squat? Was the same idea, because it's going to be the same like external torque on the way up movement, which I need. I'm very good at internal torque, but I suck at external torque, especially on the left. So working on the sumo was interesting for me because it's mostly an external torque movement. So, and it blasts the hammies and glutes. So it was interesting to do after the squat for me, and then of course the sandbag after that, or lunges depending, because then it's more internal torque. But the point was that I was trying to fix that external rotation. Sorry, the dog is licking himself, so I just kicked him out. It was annoying. Sorry, you didn't see it, but my leg doing that was me kicking, because we're at home and there's a drop, and so I very secretly just pushed him off the edge, and now he's looking at me going like, what happened? Yes, exactly, poor dog. There you go. So he, wanting to fix external torque, external rotation on my left hip, I was like, all right, so I can do all those physio exercises, or I can how to explain that? I can make my body move the way it should be moving. Not should, but the way I want it to be moving. And so that's what I did. I was like, let me find that external rotation. My external torque on the left is so bad, my external rotation sucks. I was like, I'm going to find it on the squat. Then I'm heavy. Then I'm going to find it on the sumo. Then I'm going to find it on the sandbag and everything. And obviously that wouldn't work if the problem is really, really, really bad. But at the same time, I much rather start to see all of us fixing movements through compound movements than that isolation stuff. I think we're taking it too far.
So do you think you could have fixed the external torque on the left by doing more light?
I don't think so. No, and that's what I'm discovering, and that's something I've been thinking about for a very long time. Does it work? 5 minutes and I have to. Does it work? It's a very good question. Like, for example, that's a question I'm been asking myself for a long time, because, for example, of all those physio exercises and the stuff, the stuff on the shoulder and everything. But at some point, it was the same question: does it actually work? Mm-hmm. Because all I see is people doing those exercises, but 5 years later, still doing them, and their press is still. It's like, oh, if I do my 30 minutes, I can press overhead. I'm like, that doesn't sound right. And so if you had to just pick up something and push it overhead, you'd be screwed. Yeah. So, like, can you take a sandbag, clean and press it cold? Right? You can't. So that already tells me it's a problem. So I find that those small, light, very precise exercises are a crutch, honestly, are a pill type of things that do not really fix a problem. It just keeps it at bay, at best. Yeah. It just makes the problem less obvious. It keeps it at bay, but it doesn't fix anything. Like we saw that with your hamstring, where seeing the physio like a time, he made it better, but he never fixed it. Yeah,
it made it good enough to handle it, but
exactly
manageable, but never
manageable. And I think that's what those exercises do. They allow us to manage problems, not fix problems, and manage problems. Yeah. I think to fix it, you're gonna have to go through the fire. You're gonna have to squat, but not let yourself squat incorrectly, which means for me, I have to focus very heavily on that left hip as I descend the weight. And then, so I took videos and I'm watching and I'm still shifting to the right. So I'm like, all right, so then there's a feeling on my left that I don't have, that I need to do a better job at. So I watch those videos and I can tell what I'm doing wrong. So then the next session, I do it again, but trying to find like a specific feeling. And every time I feel I'm overdoing it. It's crazy. I feel like, oh my God, I'm just completely on my left. I watch the video, I'm like, no, I'm still on the right. I'm like, really? Yeah. And so I have no feeling toward the external torque on the left, to a point where it's crazy. You would think playing with movement so many years, like, but again, you don't see it at 140 kilos, but then 160, 180, you start to see it. Yeah. And I'm like, so that means that's that moment, right, where I need to work on it. Yeah, 5 minutes. That's exactly that moment where I have to work on it. When I get to the 160 kilo and the stuff starts to shift, that's where you go, no. And then that's when you can start working on the hip and things like this. Or you can do, sets of 10, 15 reps on the squat, but then when you're tired, rep number 12, don't let yourself fall into the old patterns. So that's hard.
Basically what Q training is, right? Go to a certain uncomfortable pace or weight where you can see the imbalances mentally, physically, and go in it.
Yeah, and then go fix it there. Don't go past it.
So you're actually saying that what we're doing on the Airdyne or whatever is the same thing for the lifting weights.
Exactly.
Weight-wise, rep-wise, and also fixing imbalances in that same mindset.
Right, exactly. And that's why the template is toward. It's giving you compound movements in a Q-1 format so that you can go learn to move correctly, but with heavy weight. So that way you can still get stronger, because that's still the point of the template, is to get stronger, right? So we have to do that on the strongman. We have to do that on powerlifting. Why? Because otherwise, like, you'll do your you'll do your your activation work and everything, and then you'll squat up until a certain weight. You either do two things. Once it gets heavier, you're going to pop something, or you're going to hit a glass ceiling. Whereas what we need to do is we need to fix it. That's what we need to do. Yeah. We need to directly fix it. So that requires a very specific approach. So that's what the template was. The idea is that Q-1 toward lifting, and it's what I found very interesting is it's the consistency that it gives you. This had allowed me to go at heavy weights again and again and again and again, and work the neural output, obviously, since they're heavy, but also the skill. And in that sense of the skill is doing things correctly for you. So that means that you try a new squat, don't wreck yourself, obviously, but it's going to have to be heavy enough so that the neural output, so that you try to get stronger, but then we work on the skill in the Q-1 format. The Q-1 allows you to have so much more volume of training. Is crazy, and the extra volume allows you to have more skill. That's the thing. I was never a high volume guy, but with the Q-1 I find it possible to handle. The reason I wasn't a high volume guy is because it was impossible I couldn't do the volume. Every time I did like even 3 sets of 10 with bodybuilding, crash. I realize now it was freeze. What I was doing is I was pushing every set to the max, to failure. Right, but so at some point with bodybuilding stuff, it's not failure physically, it's failure here. So I was just hitting the fail every set for an hour and a half at the gym. And so I'll do three weeks, and then I would crash, and then I would feel extremely fatigued. And then I would have to reset my program. I did that so many times that the resetting of the program, I'm sure others can understand that resetting of the program was just, that's our last podcast. Sorry. Yeah. I wasn't tired, I was in freeze. Yeah. And I realized it was for hitting the fail so often. So the Q-1 is allowing me to approach training from a movement perspective, which is correct, increasing the amount of time I spend on skill. And I thought skill in my head was light, fast, a certain way. It's like, no. It's heavy, but you have to be present. So can you be present under heavy weights? Or like a high rep, 20 rep back squat or stuff like that? You should, but it's hard. But it's hard. So can you make sure that your hip doesn't do this or doesn't do that? On rep 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. It's hard. Yeah. It's really hard, right? But that's where progress is. It's doing everything well. And you don't have to do it great, but it's that constant approach. And never hitting the fail allows you not to go into that place where you go, oh, screw it, and then just give me 5 more reps no matter what. No. There's no matter what.
That's a way of quitting mentally, right?
I think so because...
Let me say, for me it is.
Yeah.
It's easy.
You don't care.
Yeah,
you just
it's easy to get angry,
exactly. Yeah. Right.
It's a way of quitting.
Yeah. So you do that extra rep, and then your trap is like this, or you do it incorrectly.
You know what the consequences will be of those 5 bad reps that you just do out of anger. You will get hurt. Yep. Or if you don't get hurt now, you will get hurt on the next time you do it, or
and
the time
you'll crash
after.
Mentally after the session.
Then you get yourself hurt, and you'll crash, and then you have to take a week off, and it's a way of quitting. Yeah,
and so that's why I think the Q-1 is so important, and so that's why the template is so heavy on compound movement, is to really get people to start moving more in that sense, right? With like important movement, I'm like, all right, go get stronger at those, and with all the different angles. Yeah. And I put some movements in there, like last week I put like muscle snatch or thing like this, so that you can discover other angles to work out, but still heavy, still with a full presence and things like this. But it's an arch again. Like it's great to be like the whole be present and everything. I'm like, that's exploration, all that stuff is great. You also need exploitation. So being present is cool. You still need to put weight on the bar. You still need to learn to squat for you, not because that technique was given by someone else or stuff like that. Is what is your technique? You're gonna have to find that. To find that is gonna require trying, failing, being in the dark, being frustrated, being all that stuff, and that's what's necessary. And so, if you follow the template like exactly the way I wrote it, then you're missing the point. Yeah. I want you to adapt it. to yourself. That's the point. And by the way, if you've done the whole thing 10 weeks, 5 days a week like it's written, or 6 days and everything, you're not doing it. There's no way you're taking that kind of volume and weight for 10 weeks that are not blasted out of consciousness. Like even us, like we skip either like a squat day or deadlift day on a regular basis depending on the week, or a bench day. Usually every 2 weeks I'll take one out because the volume is just getting to me. Yeah. It's too much. But and that was the thing is for people that are just coming in, they're getting the finished product of the template. But I think to get the most out of it, you need to understand the principle the template was based on. And it took a lot of years to get to the Q training. You need to understand the internal torque versus external torque. You need to understand a bit the nervous system, the fight mode. The freeze mode is very important, like so that you can look at yourself doing all this constantly.
Yeah, it's not just doing the template, it's also finding yourself.
Yes,
right?
And I think that's what I like to do. I like to help people be the best version of themselves. That's really what I'm good at. And that template is a guideline for you to go, but don't let them tell you what to do. Don't let them tell you need to squat like this, nah, just go try, go experiment, figure it out for yourself. Don't be stupid, you can listen to people, but that's all you're gonna do. You're gonna listen. It's like an advice. It's like, all right, and then I'll look at it and I'll decide whether I wanna follow it or not.
Yeah, and I think at least for me, especially when I was doing sprint, that was for me one of the hardest things to realize, because it's such an easy thing to follow someone, tell me what to do, I will follow this program and I will get these results, I have a guarantee, but there's none. There is none. And
there is no guarantee.
That for me, I feel like that was the kind of a hard realization, not in the lifting, but in the sprinting area it was, because I was like, oh, I really have to do it myself. Like there is no relying on someone else. I have to go find what's good for me. I have to see what works for me. I have to look in the mirror and see what I need to get this result, and I can't follow someone else or look at someone else. It is.
And it's messy.
It's
and
messy
it's
scary and it's not secure.
It is not. And there is no guarantee. It's like being your own boss.
Yeah, it is.
It's like having your own business. There's no one to blame when things go wrong. There's no one telling you you're doing a good job, like, success tells you that, but it's a little bit the same thing. If you want to get strong, if you want to make progress, is just be your own boss in the gym. Know what I mean? And with everything that goes with it, it's awesome to have a guarantee from someone. You say, follow my program, at the end of 12 weeks, 16 weeks, you're going to run exactly that. It'd be awesome if it were true. Yeah. The problem is, it isn't.
But, yeah.
It isn't. Because you need to run a certain way, you need to run your way, it just doesn't work like that. I know. I wish, right? I wish, yeah.
But in general, you find out that it's just never just that one menu that you just can follow and then you get that result out of it. And even if it was like that, it would have made it at the end a lot less valuable, right?
Right, but you see that with something called the Smolov cycle. So the Smolov was a crazy cycle for the squat that was introduced 30, 40 years ago now? Yeah. No, maybe less than that, maybe 20, 30. To this day, we don't know if Smolov exists as a person. So I still think he was a Russian trolling everybody. Where there was like super high volume of just a squat 3 times a week, super high volume, super high percentages, like an insane, almost like not Bulgarian method, but it was just crazy in intensity and weight. And like you do that for 12 to 16 weight, and then they were promising like 20, 30 kilos on your squat, shit like that. If that were true, we'd all be squatting 300 kilos by now, because all you have to do is do it twice a year. Yeah. Right, guess what? It doesn't work. So everybody does it once and gain 30 kilos on the squat? Yeah, because you squatted so much. Right, so time under tension, and then you do it once, and then I'm like, because I had that at seminars, and I was like, well, I'll keep doing it then. Well, it didn't work so well the second time. I'm like, yeah, no shit. You know what I mean? At some point, you need to be your own boss when it comes to training. So take things for where they are, advices, guidelines, right? And go experiment and change things as is needed for you. That requires you, so being your own boss has certain problems, is that no one is going to look over your shoulder. and tell you do this, don't do that. Like you're gonna have to, that exploitation is following the program, that exploration is you being your own boss. When you're your own boss, you don't get to ask for the next things to do. Like it's up to you. There's no one telling you you should do this or do that. If you don't want to do it, no one will tell you to. You like the structure that the exploitation gives you. That is completely true. So you're gonna have to be comfortable within a lack of structure. Not always easy. So there is a balance there, right? Which is why I did the template, because I think it helps more than it hinders. But so I follow a somewhat structure, right? Of I know I'm gonna squat, I'm gonna do the sumo, stuff like that. And then I'm changing it as I go, because you're gonna see that the template keeps changing because I'm evolving with it. Because I started honestly out of shape, strength-wise, and now I'm 12 weeks in, I'm better, but so things move. I mean, volume-wise, things change. And so I'm taking you on a journey with me, but it's not necessarily to do the template as I do it, because that template is made for me. I want you to get the ideas and make them for you. So there's an arch between that, between the structure of exploitation, right, versus the exploration, which is being your own boss in the gym. They're good and bad in both, right? So that's why the arch is very important between the two, but it's tricky. It's very tricky. And so a lot of work has to be done, a lot of trying, a lot of, that's the exploration, but like even for yourself, like don't be afraid to fail. Go try stuff. 6 weeks, 8 weeks. Take a new form of squatting, do it for 8 weeks. You'll thank me after 8 weeks. You're gonna hate me by week 4, because everything is gonna hurt, and you're gonna feel either weaker or like, yeah, but by week 8, you've learned something, and then you'll have to redo that 2 or 3 times to have really a good feel for that exercise. Like the sumo deadlift, I work with Sam on it for 2-3 years. I suck at it. I suck at sumo, but it was a great like sumo for reps murders my hammies and glutes more than anything else. It was a great way to get those skinny legs stronger. So it helped my squat a lot actually, and my conventional. But would I use it for max strength? No, I just absolutely suck at the sumo. It's crazy. Do I need to get stronger at it? Definitely, because then it will help everything. So that's the S pyramid with the structure, all that stuff. There are angles that you're probably not using in your training that you should be looking at. Some stones are left unturned, but you don't get just to go, oh, you have to go at it truly. So try to get, if you have never done sumo, 8 to 12 weeks instead of conventional, do sumo, try to get strong at it. And you will find new muscles, a new technique, a renewed interest in lifting. Who knows, right? You never bench, do a cycle of bench, do a cycle of incline, decline. Try with dumbbells versus a barbell. Does that work better for you? Does that help your overhead pressing or not? Right? So the log versus the fat bar versus the normal bar versus the monster dumbbell, like all this, go try it. That's we're here for.
And I think it will also learn to be, exactly, it's our life, but it's also, I think it will also learn to be comfortable in that uncomfortable space. Which
is very important, and that's the Q-1.
Yeah.
The Q-1
I think that is what I like the most about the template right now.
Yeah, and that's really the essence of the template is exactly that, is there's an uncomfortable place where progress is. And it's not too far this way, and it's not too far that way. There's just a place where you need to learn to be and stay to make progress. And that's exactly like, it's been 12 weeks on the template. I've never followed a template for that long. I've never been able to put 12 weeks of training together like I am right now, where every week is just blah, 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 blah. And not crashing mentally, not crashing physically. It's been extremely effective.
I think you are more, not that you were not stable before, but like
Far
more stable.
No
yeah.
No question.
I feel like as we go, you get more out of it instead of that it takes too much out of you.
At first, it was exploitation because I still had my all objective stuff of looking at weights, which are far lower now than they used to be. So I'm still pissed. But now I'm keeping, like the squat went up, the deadlift went up, but I'm not going crazy. I'm mostly, like right now, 180 kilos, 400 pounds, and I'm happy. So I work at 160, which is way below my 250 squat, obviously. But I'm also lighter, and I don't have shoes, I don't have belts. But anyway, But what I want to do is there's a certain weight, which is 365, so 160 kilo, that I have to move correctly now. And then so my hip does what I want, because I never took the time to do that when I went all the way up to 250, is I never took the time to take 160, 180 kilos and make sure my hip was doing what it was supposed to do. And even my technique wasn't as good because I was doing a good morning, which stuck me at 250. I could not go heavier because my technique wasn't good. So now I'm taking the time to build that. But not at light weights. Right? Yeah, but not at lightweight. That's why that pause with the sticking point is very good for me. Yeah. So I'm going to work on that a lot, but I'm still going to squat heavy. And then that'll be my assistance work. And then the sumo. And then the sandbag. Yeah. Although I might put the sandbags 1 week, and you know what I mean? And then, so there's an evolution with all this, because the goal is still to get me as strong as possible. So at the time I was 105 kilos, 110 kilos. I'm 97 right now. So I'm not going to squat 250 anytime soon. But as long as I go back to 220, 230, that means I'm doing it, but this time correctly, without my lower back hating me, without, all that stuff. And then that requires more glute med, so that's the external torque on the left. So that's the work, you know what I mean? So it's work. Do the work, but doing the work does not mean just exploitation, does not mean following the template. Doing the work means making it work for you. Use movement to fix movement. That would be what I would tell people. Yeah. Cool. Anyway, that's the template, and then I wanted to speak about that. And then next week we'll speak about something else. Episode 174. Thank you all for following. Talk to you guys soon.